Hello and welcome back to another Magic the Gathering EDH deck tech idea. Today we are taking a look at Ketramose, the New Dawn. It is a 3 mana 4/4 with Menace, Lifelink and Indestructible. Already that stat line is pretty impressive, but it can't attack or block unless there are 7 or more cards in exile. This is going to be quite easy to enable in this deck as we are going to exile a bunch of stuff. So there is a certain chance that we got her ready to attack at turn 4. Furthermore, whenever 1 or more cards are put into exile from graveyards and or the battlefield during your turn, you draw a card and you lose 1 life. This powerful card draw mechanic for all of your exile effects is really helpful and extremely strong, so we are totally fine of overlooking the 1 life loss. Ketramose is going to be an Orzhov commander that wants to draw a lot of value from keeping the board in check with a bunch of exile removal, keep pressuring certain players with Ketramose herself as a powerful beater because of Menace, Lifelink and Indestructible, and at some point fire off a few game-winning spells. Cards that will easily draw us a card with Ketramose are, for example, Ghost Vacuum, a 1 mana artifact, and you can tap it to exile target card from a graveyard. Furthermore, you can pay 6 mana, tap it and sacrifice it to put each creature card exiled with Ghost Vacuum onto the battlefield under your control with a flying counter on it. Each of them is a 1/1 spirit in addition to its other types, but you can only activate it as a sorcery. Another graveyard hate piece is Abyssal Harvester, a 3 mana 3/2, and you can tap it to exile target creature card from a graveyard that was put there this turn. You create a token that's a copy of it, except it's a nightmare in addition to its other types, and then exile all other nightmare tokens you control. Depending on what is in one of your opponent's graveyard, you can definitely reanimate a certain powerful beast, and along the way also draw another card with Ketramose. We play Ossification, a 2 mana enchantment, and you can enchant a basic land you control. When it enters the battlefield, exile target creature or planeswalker an opponent controls until Ossification leaves the battlefield. To make Ketramose even more bigger and more powerful, we play Agatha's Soul Cauldron, a 2 mana legendary artifact, and you may spend mana as though it were mana of any color to activate abilities of creatures you control. Furthermore, creatures you control with +1/+1 counters on them have all activated abilities of all creature cards exiled with Agatha's Soul Cauldron. It also has an activated ability, you can tap it and exile target card from a graveyard. When a creature card is exiled this way, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. Not only will this grow Ketramose as you distribute +1/+1 counters on it, you'll also draw a bunch of cards due to its ability, and in addition to that, it might gain a few new abilities. We play Skyclave Apparition, a 3 mana 2/2, and when it enters the battlefield, exile up to 1 target non-land, non-token permanent you don't control with converted mana cost 4 or less. When it leaves the battlefield, the exiled card's owner creates an XX Blue Illusion creature token where X is the converted mana cost of the exiled card. Another helpful creature is Graveyard Trespasser, a 3 mana 3/3, and your opponents need to discard a card if they want to target it due to its ward mechanic. And whenever Graveyard Trespasser enters the battlefield or attacks, exile up to 1 target card from a graveyard. If a creature card was exiled this way, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. It also has a Nightbound side, the Graveyard Glutton, a 4/4 with ward, discard a card, and whenever it enters or attacks, exile up to 2 target cards from graveyards. For each creature card exiled this way, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. Not only will we keep our opponent's boards and graveyards in check, we can also flicker our creatures for more value and also more Ketramose triggers. So we play Cloud Shift, a 1 mana instant, exile target creature you control, then return that card to the battlefield under your control. We play Ephemerate, a 1 mana instant, exile target creature you control, then return it to the battlefield under its owner's control. It also has Rebound for another free cast of it. We play Sword of Hearth and Home, a 3 mana artifact equipment, and equipped creature gets +2/+2 and has protection from green and from white. Whenever equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, exile up to 1 target creature you own, then search your library for a basic land card. Put both cards onto the battlefield under your control and then shuffle. The cutest card in this deck is Failure Exuberant Shepherd, a 2 mana 2/2 with flash. And when it attacks, exile up to one target non-land permanent. At the beginning of the next end step, return that card to the battlefield under its owner's control. If it entered under your control, put a +1/+1 counter on Phyrexia. A really helpful flicker spell, which can also be used as protection for your artifacts and enchantments, is Scroll Shift, a 3 mana instant. Exile up to one target artifact, creature or enchantment you control, then return it to the battlefield under its owner's control, and you also draw a card. Of course, we also play Flicker of Fate, a 2 mana instant, exile target creature or enchantment, then return it to the battlefield under its owner's control. And now let's talk about a few Flicker pieces that we want to target. For example, Solemn Simulacrum, a 4 mana 2/2, and when it enters the battlefield you may search a library for a basic land card and put it onto the battlefield tapped. When it dies, you may draw a card. A few of our game finisher spells will cost a lot of mana, so ramping definitely helps. We play Obsidian Ghost Council, a 5 mana 5/5, and when it enters the battlefield, target opponent loses 2 life and you gain 2 life. It also has an inbuilt flicker mechanic, because at the beginning of your end step you may exile Obsidian. If you do, return it to the battlefield under its owner's control at the beginning of your next upkeep and it gains haste. Let's keep ramping. We play Knight of the White Orchid, a 2 mana 2/2 with first strike, and when it enters the battlefield, if an opponent controls more lands than you may search a library for a plains card, put it onto the battlefield and then shuffle. We play Claim Jumper, a 3 mana 3/3 with vigilance, and when it enters the battlefield, if an opponent controls more lands than you may search a library for a plains card, put it onto the battlefield tapped. Then, if an opponent controls more lands than you, repeat this process once. If you search a library this way, shuffle. We also need a little bit more of removal for our opponent's artifacts and enchantments, so we play Lauren of the Third Path, a 3 mana 2/1 with vigilance, and when it enters the battlefield, destroy up to one target artifact or enchantment. You can tap it, so you and target opponent each draw a card. Let's keep the board in check and fill up our opponent's graveyard for our exile pieces. We play Sheoldred, a 5 mana 4/5 with menace, and when it enters the battlefield, each opponent sacrifices a non-token creature or planeswalker. For 5 mana we can also exile it and then return it to the battlefield transformed under its owner's control. This will also trigger Ketramose for another card draw trigger, but we can only activate it if an opponent has 8 or more cards in their graveyard. If we do so, we get the True Scriptures, an enchantment saga, and on the first chapter, for each opponent destroy up to one target creature or planeswalker that player controls. On chapter 2, each opponent discards 3 cards and then mills 3 cards, and on the third chapter we put all creature cards from all graveyards onto the battlefield under your control, and then we exile the True Scriptures and bring it back as Sheoldred. You want to win more? You get it. We play Bloodsheath Ascension, a 1 mana enchantment, and at the beginning of each end step, if an opponent lost 2 or more life this turn, you may put a quest counter on Bloodsheath Ascension. Whenever a card is put into an opponent's graveyard from anywhere, if Bloodsheath Ascension has 3 or more counters on it, you may have that player lose 2 life, and if you do, you gain 2 life. A card that cares about destroying and also seeing creature cards leave the graveyard is Sir Conrad the Grim. A 5 mana 5/4, and whenever another creature dies or a creature card is put into a graveyard from anywhere other than the battlefield, or a creature card leaves your graveyard, Sir Conrad the Grim deals 1 damage to each opponent. Furthermore, for 2 mana each player mills a card. If some of our flicker targets get removed, we can still draw value from them with exiling them from our graveyard, so Sir Conrad gets a trigger, and we can also keep our opponent's graveyards filled up with its activated ability. We play Exsanguinate, a 2 mana and X sorcery. Each opponent loses X life and you gain life equal to the life lost this way. We want to fire off a big Torment of Hailfire, a 2 black and X sorcery. Repeat the following process X times. Each opponent loses 3 life unless the player sacrifices a non-land permanent or discards a card. Our opponent's gotta pay that debt to the Deathless. A 4 mana and X sorcery. Each opponent loses 2 times X life and you gain life equal to the life lost this way. Last but not least, we also want to flicker Grey Merchant of Asphodel, a 5 mana 2/4, and when it enters the battlefield, each opponent loses X life, where X is your devotion to black, and you gain life equal to the life lost this way. Alright guys, these were a few cards that I will play in Ketramose, the New Dawn. Let me know which cards you would add to the deck, which legendary creature I shall feature next. Make sure to check out my full deck list in the notes below, and then I would say, see you in the next one. Goodbye guys.